The year is 1995. Former WBO heavyweight champion Tommy Morrison is going through the motions of getting back to the top of the heavyweight food chain after losing his title by knockout to the relatively inexperienced Michael Bent. After having relatively impressive success against journeymen by the likes of Sherman Griffin and Terry Anderson, and a sublime knockout victory against future boxing legend Donovan Razor Ruddock, it seems Morrison's confidence has returned.
The only thing that kept Tommy Morrison from improving in the last 2 years is himself. Now I've got myself away from all the negative influences, and put myself right in the middle of my family, my church, my kids. I'm just really, for the first time, I'm happy on the inside. And I think that's portraying out in my professional career as well.
Wanting to make a lasting impression and prove his legitimacy for a title shot, Morrison challenges the pugilist specialist Lennox Lewis, a man who just recently lost a heavyweight title of his own, experiencing the first loss of his career to the underdog Oliver McCall. Who here is destined to be champion once more and prove themselves the better man in the ring? Will the Duke assert his title of power over Lennox and banish him from the realms of men? Or will the Lion bite back and tear up Tommy limb from limb? Welcome back to Boxing After Dark. Tonight we're looking at a crossing of paths that at the time seemed like a match made in heaven. As many prayed for Tommy to fight the old king of the heavyweights, Mike Tyson, in the prior years, the thought never bore fruits, but luckily for the fans, a new hope was born. It seemed there was a new king in town with Lennox Lewis, so to show his legitimacy and lack of fear against the best, Tommy brought forth this incredible challenge, and Lewis, wanting to establish that his first loss was not a statement but a slip-up, gladly obliged to the bout.
He told me just to go out there and knock him out, and I was so wound up that I went out there and just threw the right hand to try and knock him out, but I left myself, unprotected. You could say I had a Muppet in my corner, and he was telling me to throw out the wrong punches. Pepe was more like a cheerleader than a trainer.
Both fighters needed this fight to be a success for their next title shot, so now more than ever did these artists need a sweet victory. Who had it in them to get the job done and seal their fates as a contender once again? Your guess is as good as mine. Let's get into it. Tommy Morrison was a star waiting to spark from birth. He had an athlete's body and dashing looks that made the ladies swoon. And even when his contemporaries were Mike Tyson, George Foreman, and Evander Holyfield, he stood out to the general public for being a monster of a heavyweight. But that's not all Tommy had going for him. The rumors of him being a long-lost relative of the Western movie superstar John Wayne, with the appetites of boxing and cinema historians, and his infamous appearance as the dual protagonist in Rocky V, further incentivized him as a superstar that could not be bound to just the sport of boxing. And as his fame grew, his fans did too. They'd follow his every move as he'd take on fight after fight, and the club by unanimous decision. The world was in the palm of Morrison's hands after such a magnificent fight. But soon after this evening of triumph, missteps would be made, and a man whose career that many had previously loved and anticipated became enveloped with doubt, conspiracy, and confusion. After losing his title to one of the shortest reigning heavyweight champions of all time, Michael Bent, who retired with a record of 11-2, Tommy seemed mentally lost and unprepared for what would come next in his life. Driven to a gluttonous lifestyle of partying and staying out a tad too late, people began to worry that Tommy's drive for boxing had gone. But with patience and time, activity in the ring started up once more, and with the activity came the knockout victories that everyone was so used to seeing with the Duke.
Got into a few tangles here and there, drank a little bit too much, but that was the extent of it. I felt that I got crucified by that short stint that I had hanging out in clubs and that sort of stuff. But to me, it was fun, and I was too young to realize and too young to be responsible for my career. My career it wasn't always helping me. There was a lot of people that were depending on me, and I was a very selfish person at one time, and I didn't really care about them. Only I was a me person.
In spite of the fact that Tommy had a much prettier looking record with 45 wins, 2 losses, and 39 by knockout to Lennox's 27 wins with 1 loss and 23 by knockout, the difference in competition between the two was incomparable. While Tommy did have a respectable win against George Foreman for his WBO title, the vast majority of his victories were far less flattering, and despite Lennox only being halfway through his career at this point, he had already struck up some very attractive wins against Tony Tucker, Mike Weaver, Frank Bruno, and Tyrell Biggs. Although most of these opponents weren't in the conversation of being the best fighters of all time, they were great names to have on the resume, with completely different fight styles and accomplishments that not only proved Lennox's variety as a fighter, but someone who had the ability to knock anyone, no matter the amount of talent, off their block. The night arrived on the 7th of October in 1995, and in the words of Tommy himself before the fight, a fighter is just one punch away from redemption, but also oblivion. It was a profound quote that rings true for every great fighter, but it most importantly set the tone for the night ahead of these two great men. The fighters touch gloves earnestly, and the fight embarks.
Tommy Morrison has made a big point of saying, I don't think I can outbox Lennox Lewis. I don't even think it's worth trying. But he did outbox George Foreman a couple of years ago, and there are some of us who still expect to see some of those in and out tactics.
It's going to be very difficult to tell from the upper body.
As full a picture as there is in that
down, because this is the big is because the corner, I would be telling him to.
He threw 52 snapping jabs in round number 1, and that kind of activity can only be a product of Emmanuel Steward's reworking of Lennox Lewis's fighting style.
Later in the fight, same thing right now though. For him to have that breathing, long stride, and there's a good body shot.
Good body shot by Morrison, but he goes down, so score it a knockdown for Lewis. Morrison. Little left hook from Lennox Lewis that put Morrison down has apparently also cut his eye. For Lewis.
Round 2 sees the action ramp up as both fighters get more comfortable throwing bombs. After Morrison attempts to stick to his game plan and stay on the inside, Lennox lands a sneaky left hook that makes Tommy take a knee and suffer the first knockdown of the fight.
Trying to block Morrison's way in with it.
There's another good left hook by Lennox Lewis, and as he goes right after the eye that he bloodied in the last round.
Lewis must be careful here.
Decade of the 90s that Tommy Morrison's been.
The pace, you can count for it
inside.
Well,
exactly what's going on.
I can tell you one more thing that I can see.
Third round coming to a close. Relatively cautious round for Lewis.
I wouldn't try to walk him down. It's almost like backing down.
There's a right hand by Morrison, but he's starting to connect with those right hands as he steps inside. Morrison. There was no way he could outbox Lennox Lewis. Bill Slane gets him at the distance again, and Lewis landed a right hand.
Have to be very careful.
Tried to do, countering over the jab with the right hand punches. Morrison made from the right eye of Morrison again after that left hook by Lewis. Morrison stepping in with the right. And lands a chopping right as the round comes to a close. In this stanza, it happened to...
The only eyes are starting to swell, and this...
Harold Letterman, how do you have it scored so far?
5, Lennox Lewis. I gave Lennox Lewis coming.
And that means you're that much further out of your own range.
Appears to be...
expression on his face.
As Lewis's arms. And there's a monumental uppercut. Morrison went to one knee. Lane calls it a knockdown, correctly so.
This fight is basically over. Like I told you before, Morrison has that I give up look on him. He knows every combination that Morrison throws, and they're insane. So he cannot hit Lennox.
Despite Tommy putting his all into the fight, through round 5, the gap is made bigger and bigger as Lennox perfectly lines up his shots and takes advantage of the combinations Morrison keeps trying to get away with. And after a beautiful right uppercut, Morrison gets caught in the open once again and takes another knee.
Morrison has basically almost given up in this fight. He wants to go out and see can he land a big shot now.
Oh, that's a terrific right-hand shot. Morrison say to the doctor, I've still got this thing too fast. I'm dangerous. But the left hook has not been a factor so far. Down goes Morrison again, and this is becoming a blowout. Third knockdown of the night for Lewis. And Lennox begins to showboat just a little bit. Now he comes back to the jab.
This is the round that Morrison stopped Ruddock after taking a terrible beating.
Lane's getting very close to a stoppage here. You get that sense. Down goes Morrison again, and I wonder if Mills has seen enough. There is no 3 knockdown rule in effect. That's the 4th knockdown of the fight, and that'll do it.
A terrific performance by Lennox Lewis. Defensively, he kept that right hand up so that he completely neutralized Tommy Morrison's outstanding left hook.
The fight began with chaos, and it ended with disbelief, as one of the greatest champions of all time beat a champion who never got to truly show his capabilities. The night ended with joy from Lennox's camp, and tears from Tommy's. Lennox Lewis has a novel's worth of success after this bout, losing only one more fight for the rest of his career, which he promptly avenged, and being the first British undisputed heavyweight champion since 1899. But Lennox on this night showed who he really was, a man who would never give up on being the greatest, willing to face any danger necessary to ensure the eyes stayed on him and to prove his talent to the world, going on to beat countless Hall of Famers and legends like Mike Tyson, Ray Mercer, and Evander Holyfield were all just a byproduct of the heart that was shown in this period of Lewis's life, when he refused to back down from the defeat he faced and forced himself to improve rather than devolve. That's what made his domination on the heavyweight division inevitable. Tommy would only have 3 more fights after this bout, 2 of which came over a decade after this dream-shattering night, and all 3 being by way of a knockout victory. Tommy never managed to find the heart to continue to be the greatest heavyweight fighter after such a painful defeat. But whether his motivation left him or not, there's no doubt that he was an amazing talent and a pleasure to have in the boxing world for the time he was there. Tommy Morrison sadly passed in 2013 of cardiac arrest after being bedridden for over a year. And while it's often acknowledged, yet a point of contention between family and friends on whether he had been diagnosed with HIV and later AIDS, we here at Boxing After Dark believe the problems he faced outside of the ring are of no concern to us. For whichever was Tommy Morrison past, he was a hero and a warrior until the very end, and for that alone we hope he rests in peace and thank him for the beauty that he brought to the sport. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to see more from Boxing After Dark, feel free to subscribe to the channel and don't be afraid to drop a like and comment. Thank you for watching.